station, Adventist Reflections. Now, to discuss character building ideas, here is your host, Dr. Danzy.
Hi family, welcome back to the Adventist Reflections podcast. And this is episode 5 of this season, ministering to the least of these. And today's musical blessings come from my friend Michael Richards, and I hope that you get blessed by it as I have been over this year. This week's lesson is titled The Cry of the Prophets, and the key text is found in Micah 6:8, which is a favorite of many, and it says, "He has shown thee, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." So today's lesson is focused once again on aspects of social justice, on God's character, and this is shown in the life of his prophets. So I would like to share with you a quote. This book was published in 1962 by the Jewish Publication Society of America, and this quote is found in our lessons. It says, "We ourselves witness continually acts of injustice, manifestations of hypocrisy, falsehood, outrage, misery, but we rarely grow indignant or overly excited." Here comes the punchline. To the prophets, even a minor injustice assumes cosmic proportions. So today we're going to focus on two aspects: the role of the prophet in matters of service and our role as children of God. Before we do so, allow me to welcome back our special guest, who we could safely say that she's no longer a guest, but part of this Adventist Reflections family. So Catalina from the Connected Adventist podcast and leader of the Adventist Committed to Serve ministry. Catalina, welcome back. How is it going?
Good, great. Really good. Like I said just before, I'm trying to not yawn because it's very early in the morning that we do our recordings. But yeah, glad to be back on and to be able to share again.
I guess it's in perspective. Yeah, it is quite early for us. 5 in the morning or so. It's not easy sometimes, especially on weekends, yeah. Isn't it? So thank you. Thank you for joining us. It is what it is, and it is when we can. So thank you, family, for listening to us.
You know what? I always think of people that, they have they co-host, like Burn the Haystack. Mm-hmm. Like I always think of like Jesse and Josh trying to coordinate to be available at the same time and just be consistent with that. It must be such a struggle. Yeah. We've just done like 5 lessons and we've had to rebook and reschedule so many times. So
I know. It's true.
It isn't as easy.
And also imagine those people on TV. When I was in the Philippines, I have a privilege to go and meet a friend, make a new friend. And she works at this TV channel thing. And, those morning programs they run, they're live. But literally, they start the whole thing at 1 in the morning. I mean, you don't watch anything until like 6 or 5. But she will get picked up by the channel 1 in the morning and be there all morning doing the scripts and doing all this stuff, editing and whatever. It's crazy. Yeah. So anyhow, we do it for you, family.
That's why we start early. We get our makeup and our stylist in.
That's right, especially me. I need to do my hair quite meticulously. All right, so Catalina, the prophets. Let us recap. So God makes men to his image. We fall apart. We become selfish, egocentrical, desiring our own benefit. Now, God sends a blueprint, the 10 Commandments. He needed to remind us of what's going on. He needed to remind us what's the best for us to live, to treat each other. Then the people of God continually behaving unjustly. The prophets have always been there. And then he sends judges, and then they ask for kings. Kings come. They became unfair kings. And the prophets were always there again, calling the kings back to God's way. And so this is where we are in this lesson. We are going to be speaking about what the prophets did. I would like to ask you, aside from Christ, do you have a favorite prophet?
I think I'm going to go with the default of Isaiah.
Okay. Because of chapter 58, or you just like it?
No, in addition, I think just when we look at the focus of Isaiah, I feel it is very balanced in the sense that I can sense his concern for his people.
Okay.
And he was brave enough to speak up.
Okay.
I feel that with Isaiah, there just seems to be a really good balance between concern and maybe criticism or rebuke.
For sure.
And I believe that in terms of my past and my history, as for those who may know, I associated with a lot of independent groups. I was a conservative or a very committed Christian. And I felt that as I associated with those groups, there was a lot of space given to criticism, but there wasn't a lot of space given to empathy. So for me, I feel too that there wasn't enough of a balance with that. But I do feel that with Isaiah, there is a decent balance. It is definitely something that, I really appreciate.
Great.
And then Isaiah 58 on top of that. That's like the cherry on top.
That's it. Right, for sure. Well, look, I thought about it. It was hard for me. I couldn't think of one specifically. I mean, the name Daniel came to my mind first, but I think I'm biased, and therefore I had to rethink about it. I was like, well, no, why Daniel? I mean, he did really cool stuff and whatever. Then I thought about John and I think I'm biased because I do have Revelations as one of my favorite books. But is he really my favorite prophet? The message was great, but I didn't really know who he was. And so I ended up choosing Moses. He was the third name that came to my mind. I think much of Moses as a prophet, but he was a prophet. I chose him because in his service for God and for people, in my opinion, he was unmatchable in some ways. I mean, so much more that he was willing to give his life to save them all from destruction because of all these stupid things that they did.
Yeah, that's true.
And I long for that. And I think I chose him because I don't have that. In church, I am not confident that I'm there yet. I don't know if you're going to be worshiping a golden kangaroo, that I am going to be saying, Lord, don't wipe them, kill me and save them.
Lord, blot my name out.
That's right. I said, like, yes, Lord, just wipe them all and let us make a new Jinjin with you and I. I don't think that's...
God, I agree with you.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think I'll say that, but I'm not there yet, and I long to be there. I would like to have that kind of spirit, that kind of motive, like Moses did. I think he was a true leader, and he went to heaven. So it makes some kind of sense that he was righteous despite of his defects. All right. When you think of a prophet, though, I mean, we already talked a little bit about it when we express our favorite prophet, so we could say. What comes to your mind when you think of a prophet?
This is first instinct. I feel you're in trouble. Like if a prophet is being sent.
Yeah. Good.
Or if a prophet is speaking to you, like watch out. Because, I mean, in terms of what we have a look in the condition of Israel in the Old Testament, usually a prophet was given because something was going wrong. Right. There was a wrong turn that had been taken, and we were no longer in God's plan and in God's will and in God's path. When we have a look at aspects of the prophets, then there was also, balancing out and giving them hope. You guys have messed up, but, be thankful that there is a Savior who's coming to restore all of that. So I do believe that with every message of rebuke, with every message that came to, put you back into line, there was always a balance with, but remember that Christ restores. And I feel that is the really positive aspect of the prophets, is that no matter how much we mess up, Christ can fix it. Regardless of the consequences, there is still the hope that Christ will restore everything that was broken, either on this life or in the life to come.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's what really the prophets were there for. God sent them to do that. And yet, people like me, I am like you as well in the sense of thinking of prophet equals to trouble. But the first thing that comes to my mind is predictions. That's the common popular, even out of Adventism. When you say prophet, people think about, Nostradamus or something like that, some weird stuff. And so I'm a common thinker, I guess. I'm just a common person. And I think of somebody predicting the future. Maybe I'm biased with the idea of Christ saying, I have told you this before it comes to pass, so that when it comes to pass, you may believe. And so maybe I'm biased from the idea that prophets point us back to the greater hope of Jesus' return. But you're right. Prophets were more than just that, right? Like they had a greater role in humanity, a greater role in society. God appointed them for specific times. They pop out for specific duties. So you already talked about it in terms of the role of a prophet. How do you see their role in terms of what we've been studying, though, in terms of social justice specifically? Is there anything that calls your mind?
I think what I really picked up, and specifically through the lesson, is that, and obviously when we put it in the context of social justice, as much as the prophets came to rebuke and, set the path straight and guide Israel back, in the direction that they should be going, I do believe that throughout the prophets that we looked at in this lesson, there was always an aspect that touched on how we should treat others, how we should look at people that are being mistreated, people that have poor conditions. There just seemed to be a lot of evidence to show that not only did the prophets come to tell Israel, follow the truth and you guys, you're in apostasy, but then he's also and you're also lacking love for those who are suffering. And I feel that as we have a look in the context, and again, back to my story and my past, I feel that within the church, I believe that we have the truth, and I'm very strongly convicted of that. And we have placed a lot of emphasis on the truth, and we share the truth, and we outreach the truth, we evangelize the truth. We put so much emphasis on sharing the Seventh-day Adventist truth. But I feel that if we were to have a look at what the lesson has brought out, there's more to being used by God to share the truth than just sharing the truth, if that makes sense. There's also, hey, let us reach out to those in need. Within a lot of Adventists, there will be people that will say, oh, but, it's not all about love. It's about, the truth and the love. And I believe that we have done the truth so strongly that we have built so many pillars and columns and just struck infrastructure on theological truth that we've forgotten about the humanitarian truth. And I believe that as we've gone into this lesson, that is what it's bringing out. Great. We have the truth. We all know that. Many people have, focused their whole ministry on the truth. But if we have a look at what the prophets were calling Israel to do, they were calling them to also have a soft heart and to see people suffering and to want to do something for that and to fix it and to at least alleviate the pain of the consequence of sin for those that don't know Christ and for people that are suffering.
So what I'm hearing here is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from you, Catalina, is that the prophets had a role in society to point people back to the love of Christ, to point people back to having that humanitarian, if you want to call it in today's terms, lifestyle that they seem to have forgotten back then. But what I'm hearing is that it sounds that we have parallels with the prophets. Now, I do not know about you. I am not the son of a prophet, nor am I a prophet. But I'm hearing that I have kind of like a role of a prophet in that sense. Is that what you're saying? As Adventists, as Christians, we are to be similarly?
Yeah, I mean, we have a look at the lesson that was last week of Psalms and Proverbs.
Yes.
And if we're going to read the Psalms and the Proverbs, if we're going to read the Bible, we are going to see that as part of reading the Bible and studying the Word and letting the Word transform us, we are naturally going to be given a sensitivity towards the suffering of people. So regardless of whether you want to call yourself a prophet or not, the Word of God is going to reveal to us that there is a need for each one of us as Christians and as followers of God to also desire and to seek out mercy and justice within the society that we live in and within our communities. And so when we touch that now, when we connect it with this week's lesson, which is what the prophets are crying out because God's people aren't being merciful. They're not they're not demonstrating justice. They're not looking out for those. So I believe that if a prophet was to come to the church today, they would say the same thing. You guys are so convicted on sharing the truth, the commandments, the Sabbath, the state of the dead, the health message. You guys put so much emphasis, so much invest of your resources, of your time, but you're forgetting the fact that there are people that are suffering that need your help, whether that is through food, through shelter, through clothing, whether it's just being there, just being present for them. I think that's what the prophets would come and say to us. Apart from the apostasy and the heresies and whatever it is that you disagree with in the condition of the church, I think the prophets would also tell us the same thing. You guys are actually so cold and you're so convicted that the truth is the only aspect of your Christianity that you are to live out, that they would rebuke us just as they rebuked Israel.
For sure. As you're talking about that, these thoughts come to my mind, and I'm thinking, Daniel, when was the last time that you heard a sermon about this? And I really cannot remember, if I'm honest. And I wonder why. I'm here thinking and sitting, why? I guess I get attracted to this philosophical life, existential questions, doctrinal matters that make you think hard. But I don't know if that's the real reason. I wonder if I will feel hypocritical preaching something for which I'm not doing. and that's probably a bit of a self-confession, and that's okay. You know, we need to start having these conversations where we need to think, hey, you know, all these ministries that are preaching the straight truth, the straight message, the present truth, but I'm doing absolutely nothing. Could it be that they are not preaching on the other part that is so important?
Yeah.
Because with what authority can you do that when you are not doing it yourself? Now, one of the things that puzzle me as we think about these prophets that we study in the lesson is that all of them, many of them, as we study them, they point to the people of Israel about the nations around them. And they say, you know, listen to this stuff, the prophet says, you know, like the Philistines, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Moabites, etc., etc., etc. And they're really bad, and God is going to come and avenge, and God is going to come and do justice. And I cannot just imagine the Israelites, if you want to call it the Adventists, saying, amen, amen. And yet, what comes next is what hits the most. Because they later on say, but hang on, guys, hang on. You know, all these nations around you that are violating, oppressing, taking bribes, afflicting the just, cheating, violating the Sabbath, etc., etc. Guess what, Daniel? Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? Because you are part of that. You are part of some of this stuff. And so it was a hard, for me, as I look at the lesson, it was a hard take to be able to see that, to be able to reflect on these ideas, that we need to start looking inward and then be able to serve others. And remember that the prophets were here to tell us about our duty as Christians and what really is to be a Christian. When Christ came, how many sermons, apart from the Sermon on the Mount, which was about how to treat each other, all his doctrines in the Sermon on the Mount were about serving each other and being kind to each other, and being kind to the neighbors. But we didn't really hear about any of the other stuff. Aside from that, when you read all the Gospels, it was primarily about how we had to treat each other, how we had to be socially just and merciful in grace, how to be like him.
Well, another aspect that I wanted to connect with that point is that, I mean, if we have a look at what Jesus's ministry was, I mean, I've had this conversation with someone else. When we have a look at his ministry, there was a lot of sharing the truth, but you cannot ignore or disregard the humanitarian work that Jesus did. Now, some people don't like it being called humanitarian. That's fine. About the personal work that Jesus did that was not doctrinal. It was not, I am the truth, you know, it was purely, let me heal you. Let me stop your physical suffering. Let me not discriminate or marginalize against you like the church people do. So I think we have to be really aware and sensitive of the fact that Israel did not know of their condition. The Jews did not know of their condition. And I believe that as Adventists, like you said, we may not know what our condition is as well. We may be in the same position as the Pharisees, where we feel that all our emphasis should be on the truth and being part of this elect group of, you know, holy people that have been set apart. I think sometimes we may place so much focus on that and here come into the faith doctrinally, but not come into the faith with the sensitivity of what Christ had when he would see people suffering. And as I thought about the lesson, you know, and I don't want to be critical, but I want to say it in the sense of for people to understand. I know I have sat at many potlucks and I've been at many prayer meetings, and a lot of the emphasis of when we share and when we feel a blessing is often, oh, we were able to share with someone about the Sabbath. Often our blessings come from doctrinal encounters, and they are great. I'm not taking away from that. I definitely don't want to take away from that, because obviously a blessing is a blessing. But it would be so encouraging to see a 50-50 balance. Like I was so blessed because I was able to go and clean someone's house who has been sick. I was so blessed because I was given the opportunity to, pay for someone who didn't have enough change. So there are so many situations where we can share some more practical situations where we can say, we demonstrated Christ's love for people rather than we just showed them the truth. And that was the highlight of our week. I wish we could sit around at potluck and just share of all the things that we have helped to ease the burden of sin on people's lives by practically going out and doing something for them. And that would be our ideal. And also, I want to balance that. I don't think that we should all be about just acts of kindness and not be wanting to share the truth. I think that's where we need to find our balance. I think we've done the truth a lot. Now we need to balance it out. And that is, I think, God's ideal is for us to be 50-50 in both aspects.
Yeah, middle ground. And that's what Jesus did. I mean, when you think about it, he met their needs. He called them, follow me, which in a way is a doctrinal aspect. We call people follow him. It's teaching that God saves, Jesus saves, his sacrifice saves. I like that. And perhaps let us think about giving ourselves the permission to not criticize when somebody shares that. Because as you're saying that, I'm thinking, I can imagine people saying, how, you're just full of yourself. Stop talking about what you do and the good deeds that you do. Let us be encourage each other. I mean, Hebrews 10:24 and 25 says, let us come together to exhort one another in good works, in love and good works. So how else are we going to do it if we don't really share with each other what we did? And I liked, we're talking here about Sabbath School. I like how Sabbath School used to be. Look, I wasn't born here nor raised here in Australia, but back at home in Sabbath School, and they still do, you take record of things. And in every class, you talk about those good deeds you did, not for any purpose, but rather to see the temperature, the thermometer of the class. It's like a measure of what are we doing to minister to those in need. So they talk about, hey, did anybody give food? And somebody put their hand up, yeah, 1 or 2 items of food, any pieces of clothing, any money given to whoever needed it. And it sounds very, I don't know if want to use the term legalistic, very works-based, but nobody is saying, hey, how many of you are saved here because of what you gave? They're just saying, hey, has anybody here ministered to the community? And I think it's a good idea. Some people feel uncomfortable about that because here in Australia, we're not used to. I was speaking to an elder of my church back when I was in Rockhampton, and he told me, we used to do that. I don't know why we stopped. He wasn't very keen on doing it back either. But I wonder, if in our society here in the Western world, we think more of the idea that we don't want people to know what we do, or we feel ashamed or uncomfortable. But that's part of the accountability. I mean, one day the big screen is going to be rolled up, down rather, and we're going to see every single thing. And so I think we should need to be more transparent with each other.
Yeah. And also I was doing a Bible study yesterday, and we were going through the second coming, and it says in Revelation that Jesus is coming with his reward, and it is according to our works. So there is an aspect of our spirituality that is not just, I believe and I love God. Like, there is an outward aspect of our faith that is demonstrated. And not only is it demonstrating by us abiding to the 10 Commandments, which us Adventists, we really we got that one all down.
We drilled down
in the sense that we know the importance, we know how to share, we know how to, we got the 10 Commandments all worked out in the sense that theologically we understand that. But I think there's an aspect of that we have to share and be human like Christ and see people in suffering, and our hearts should break. And we should be willing to step out. Jesus got rebuked by the Pharisees and the Jews because of the work that he did with people that were in suffering. I believe that we should do the same thing. Like if people may disagree, and I don't believe, maybe there are boundaries as to who we can help and how we can help them. But I think realistically, we shouldn't limit ourselves to, we can't help people like that. I feel that there is really no boundary as to how we can help. We just have to be prayerful in how we help and how we go about that.
Yeah. So family around the globe, reflect on these ideas. I would like to invite you to bring them to your Sabbath School class as well. as Catalina is mentioning, these practicalities, and we're discussing about what we are to do and how we are to do it. And let us not be scared to bring these concepts. Try to make your Sabbath schools practical. Bring the challenge view of what are we doing today as a Sabbath school class, as a church, as a youth group, as a Pathfinder adventure group, whatever you have in your church. What are we doing to ensure that we are sharing the message that God gave the prophets? And I guess the last question, which is, did the prophets see any changes straight away? And I think we already know that they didn't. Henceforth, more prophets came up. We have all the minor prophets there and the big ones. But did that stop them from continuing to motivate God's people in love and good works, as Hebrews 10, 24 and 25? And I think the answer is no. So if your class doesn't want to do anything, if your church doesn't want to do anything, keep on motivating them, but don't let that stop you from doing whatever you have to do. Let us continue to proclaim God's justice and mercy, and let us not be ashamed to bring it up, even if people call you're talking about works, salvation by works. And like Catalina said, well, it's part of it, but it's not the whole thing. We're not saved because of what we do, but if we really have Christ and claim his righteousness and his grace on us, well, our guess is that, as James says, it will show up somehow. And it will show up showing his character to others. Any final remarks, Catalina, before we go out to our weekly encourager?
No, just to add on to and build on to that last point. I believe that once people have a burden for community service, or they have a burden for outreach to whatever it is that you feel that there is a lack, whether it's to help children on the street, to help the youth, whether it's to help marginalized communities. Once you have that, I get very excited, because I'm like, God has brought you to a stage where you have the tenderness of his heart. So I encourage you as well that if your church doesn't get behind you, if your youth group doesn't get behind you, if your family doesn't get behind you, just continue to do the work and do it in however you can do it on your own. It might not be what you would have liked. Maybe you would have liked a whole, group of 10 people to go out and do the project. But if it is something that only you are able to do for whatever reasons, logistics or commitment or whatever, I still encourage you to do that, because that has come from God. That tenderness towards the suffering of people has come from God. And don't let other people quench that fire that God has started. So find practical ways that you can do that as an individual or as a group with, the minimal people that you might have. So continue to do the work regardless of whether it's one person or 20 people. And God will still give you that tenderness and that sensitivity to help people in need.
Absolutely. Thank you, Catalina. Do you have somebody for us who is an Adventist committed to serve? We had the End Mile Community Church last week. And now, who is it this week? Who, where, what, and why?
Okay, so we're going to New York.
Oh, nice. The Big Apple.
So put on your I love NY. Yep. So we're going to New York. And again, I would like to encourage our listeners to get onto the Acts Facebook page, just because there's I know there are things that I don't know about. So obviously on my personal Facebook, I have lots of different churches, but I'm sure there are other churches. So obviously I've targeted American and Australian churches, but I would love to hear from other people. So feel free to send me a message or get in contact with me so that I can like your church's Facebook page or your ministry page, so then I can then promote it through Acts and then obviously through this podcast as well. But this is from New York, and it is from the Greater New York Conference, and they have a band, and it is called Showers of Blessings. And what that band has is just multiple showers, and they just drive to different areas throughout that conference that have a high population of homeless people.
Yeah.
And they basically just set the van up and people can come and have showers. So they initially started it with a smaller van, and then they just saw that it was so successful and that people really appreciated it, and then they've upgraded to a bigger van. So you'll see the post on the Acts page, so you can see it, but it is a decent size. Like, it's almost like a semi-truck kind of. It's very big. It's very big.
So is it the whole conference, or is one church in a specific there?
No, so it is through the conference.
Okay.
Yeah, it's through the conference, and I think the track travels to different areas, and then I'm assuming maybe the churches in that area help support it and run it or whatever it is.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Yeah. Awesome. I'm so keen to look at that in the Acts Facebook page, and I'm so keen to tag our SEQ so that we locally think about things that we can invest some of our resources in Queensland for sure. That's amazing. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I am very challenged by that and motivated as well. Now, do you have a challenge for us this week?
I do. So the challenge for us this week will be to do an act of kindness.
All right.
One thing.
Practical stuff.
Thing. However that is. Yes, but I would like it to be a little bit more than just sending a text message.
Okay.
Maybe it is to go and visit someone.
Okay.
Maybe it is to give like a very just small gift. I have a thing. I like to give flowers to people.
Okay.
So I'll share this one. Sometimes when we go to the shops, there is a $5 bouquet that you can get from Aldi. Yeah, and my girls, we will pick one, we will buy it, and then we will find a lady in the car park before we go home to give the bouquet to.
Oh, nice.
It's a $5 gift, and the ladies are always, maybe I should give it to a guy as well. Maybe a guy would really like to take it home, and he can give it to his girlfriend and claim that he bought it. But yeah, that is one thing that we like to do, and it always is just, people's reaction is just, the reaction is a blessing for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe something like that, or maybe just surprise someone with something that they weren't expecting.
Awesome. I like it. I accept the challenge. It's very practical, and I look forward to reports of how that went for me. I'm going to pray about it because I want to be impressed. I want to be impressed exactly what to do and do it. And maybe make it a habit like what I'm hearing that you have. And that's the idea, This could be a one-off, or it could become a habit of a lifetime until the day Jesus returns. Well, once again, thank you, Catalina. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. I'll see you 5 o'clock next week.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you all of you for joining us this week as well and giving us some of your time to listen to some of our intrapersonal reflections on Adventist ideas. So I'm Dr. Dancy, and today I choose to love God in action and accept this challenge. What about you? Remember to subscribe to this podcast, like it, share it, hashtag it, comment, and find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Tumblr as Adventist Reflections. God bless you.